What do you do with all of this? Well, we're going to talk about all of that when we come back. Bury the lead, because I'm going to tell you the answer to that question is yes. And I have to tell you that there's a lot that we don't know about OCD, and there's debate about whether we should refer to this as a mental illness or a brain disorder, actually, and there are features of both. I want to introduce a colleague of mine. This is Dr. Charles Sophie. Dr. Sophie is an eminent psychiatrist. He is well-versed in brain function, brain chemistry, and the role of neurology and neurotransmitters, particularly with regard to this kind of disorder. Dr. Sophie, would you come up for a minute here, if you would? Okay, now, Dr. Sophie, let me get us anchored here. In a regular brain, in everybody's brain, we have thoughts that originate here in the orbitofrontal cortex, right?
Correct.
That's normal. That happens with everybody.
Everybody.
All right, and then that thought messages with neurotransmitters that go sending the messages into the internal part of the brain.
Yes.
But what goes wrong with the OCD brain?
Well, the OCD brain at this point should have a filter, because this orange section should filter around thoughts that don't need to get in.
Right.
But OCD brains have a filter that's got holes in it, and they all get through.
Okay, so we get things in here that shouldn't get through. Give me an example.
So, like, we pick up dirt, a normal thought, we feel dirty, we feel it, and we act on it, and we clean our hands. But if you touch something that's not really that dirty, the filter should say, it's not that important, don't wash your hands.
All right, but with an OCD patient, they don't filter that out.
Right.
The threshold's not there, so
Correct.
It gets in.
Right.
Okay, and when it gets through, some of these things get stuck in here.
Yes.
And now we get in kind of a racetrack pattern, and that's why they get into this repetitive behavior, right?
It's obsessive.
It just keeps going over and over and over again.
Yes, obsessive thoughts and compulsive behaviors.
Okay. Now, what are these neurotransmitters that we're talking about that are sending these messages here? These are chemicals, right?
Right. These are chemicals in your brain that go back and forth within the fluid of your brain to make an electrical shock to go and make the movement. So you're talking serotonin, norepinephrine, dopamine, epinephrine, all different
if a parent is expecting their child, they're like, hey, come on, you just got to bear down and get over this. This is not voluntary.
Correct. You can't fix this just by manning up and overthinking it.
So when people say OCD is not necessarily a psychological disorder, that sometimes they talk about it as a brain disorder or a neurological disorder, this is what we're talking about.
Totally.
All right, fair enough. Okay.
Thank you.
The good news is there are ways to improve this. The bad news is when this happens, lots of things start to happen. Anxiety builds, and you start trying to figure out ways to alleviate the anxiety. And if you're having anxiety, panic attacks, I mean, you'll hop on one foot and tap your ear. If it helps, you'll do whatever, right? And there are a very specialized group of medications, SSRIs, that properly used can help this, correct? Talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. Because as Dr. Phil said, the chemicals that are not stopping and flowing is serotonin. In other parts of the brain, there's other chemicals, but serotonin is your key chemical. That's not flowing right. And so the medications prevent the serotonin from going places it shouldn't and makes it go where it should and stay longer where it should.
It's selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors that it has to be very dialed in. It's a very specialized sort of thing, but it can be great help. And there are other things that you can do.